We are talking with top marketers and business leaders today about how to solve for problems and get ready for the rebound inside of COVID-19, and taking these skills that have us manage this time period well, resiliency going forward to be ready for anything. Today, we're thrilled to have Rich Kahn with us. Rich is a serial entrepreneur and one of the most notable security experts in the digital marketing space, with nearly 30 years of experience. That's really something.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah. Among other honors, Rich received the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award for Technology and was a finalist in the American Business Awards for Best Executive of the Year. That must have been a blast.
Dave, the events have been really kind of cool, the way they've done the vetting and everything else, and they were
Yeah,
great times.
it's wonderful to be acknowledged. It's really great. I know your most recent efforts include being co-founder and CEO of ezanga.com and Inura.io.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you sold a company at an ISP in the late 90s, and you co-founded Paid for Search, which reached $1 million in revenue within 5 months of operation. That must have been something.
Yep.
Yeah, and then
A lot of
moved on to the next. Sorry, go ahead.
history. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Like, when's the book coming out?
I'm
Yeah.
not much of a writer, so we'll see.
Ghostwriters. They've get everything out of your head. It sounds like you've got some great stories. Yeah, so eZanga was the start of it all, of this most recent chapter with internal ad fraud solution that you created called Traffic Advisors that pre-filters clients' traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you've got the standalone ad fraud platform, Nero.io, which handles ad fraud in any environment. It's really
Correct.
exciting, very important for digital marketing today.
Yeah. Yeah, digital fraud is growing very quickly in the marketplace, and I guess most people don't realize how much of a problem it is. Uh, the quick story on it is basically if you look at like 2013, 14, 15, when they started tracking fraud, it was all about 6 or 7 billion a year, which is a huge amount of revenue being stolen from advertisers. In 2018, it jumped up to 20 billion. 2019, it was over 40 billion, and they're expecting it to be 100 billion by 2023. The short version of it is 1 in every $4 spent in digital marketing is fraud.
It's amazing. We're out here hustling, trying to prove what we're doing is working and produce real ads and ROI. And yeah, that's really something to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just probably folks might be curious, but these are your 25-year wedding anniversary photos behind you. Just wonderful. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Yep. Family first, right?
Always, always. Family and health are more important than business any day. And business is an awful lot of fun.
Sure.
It enables a lot of things. And certainly what you're doing is contributing to a lot of folks. So thanks for that. So Rich, what are you seeing are positives or the silver linings, if you will, of this experience of COVID-19? Anything there for you?
Well, change is always good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're always looking at different things, and different companies and different colleagues that I talk to are finding, that they're being forced into situations that they wouldn't normally try out, like working remote and stuff like that. For some companies works great, some companies doesn't. And this is a kind of like a forced way to find out that is it working or not working for your company. And if you want it to work, you're kind of forced to figure out how to make it work. So it's giving a lot of opportunity to try something new. I'm old school. I like working from an office. We're in the office now. Once we went to phase 2 in our state, we brought everybody back to the office. The nice thing is we have private offices for everybody, so they don't need to wear a mask when they're in their office, and when they're moving around the office, they need to wear a mask. So still everybody's safe, but I think COVID has really taught companies that I've got a couple colleagues that have actually gone to spent 2-3 months doing the work remote, and then a couple of them made final decisions that they're permanently remote. So working remote, when I was working remote, for other companies, there's pros and cons. The pros are you don't have to commute to work. You don't have to do all the stuff that you would normally do. You're at your home. You literally roll out of bed and walk into your office. But the distractions become an issue. So you have to learn how to deal with, the many distractions you have at home. So I talked to some people that were working, and they're like, I'm sitting here and working, realize it's 2 in the afternoon. I'm doing laundry. And I got to focus on work, otherwise I'll be working until 7, 8 o'clock at night to get it all done. And that's becomes, the challenge that people have to learn to deal with it, just because, again, it's something new.
Got it. So what do you see that's possible now because of coronavirus or because of the forced changes that we've all been dealing with that wouldn't have been possible without it?
Well, in the workforce, I think, some companies, as they're growing, especially quickly growing, there's limits to the amount of staff they can have based on physical locations. So managing that has always been, for fast growing companies, a concern.
Mhm.
Now, if you do a hybrid model where you have some in the office and some out of the office, it eliminates that overhead of having to find new office space, having to put in office space. So you can actually bring on, if you're a fast growing company, you need to hire people, you can do it remote there. And this year has kind of forced people to learn exactly how to make that work. I had a company that I work with. They have over 150 employees, and they were getting ready for coronavirus, so they had to run out and buy 150 laptops, and then have somebody prepare them and put all the software on them and get them ready, and then get them in the hands of their employees, so that once everybody went working from home, they had that ability to do that. But again, I think it's everything else. It's forcing people into a situation that they wouldn't normally have found themselves into, and everybody's finding what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and the challenges that they have to solve. Because if they weren't forced into that situation, they probably wouldn't have done it. So now they have the opportunity to learn something different. And I think, there are some companies that are benefiting from that so that they can grow faster without having to worry about physical location.
Great point. Yeah, there are many of us who wouldn't change or try new things on if we weren't forced to. I get that. And the hybrid model is great because it can be a big problem
Mm-hmm.
when you're growing quickly. It's good to have more tools in the tool chest, more options. So what if you and your peers or your teams learned because of COVID-19 that you wouldn't have learned or experienced without it?
Well, when you're not in a physical office, we were working remotely for about almost 4 months. Um, so we had to, alter our management style, alter our communication style. So a lot of stuff has changed in order to make that work in a remote environment, to make sure that everybody's, being held accountable, still doing their work, and being able to communicate with the other people so people know what's going on within the company. So there was a couple things we instituted, different tools that we started taking advantage of, and we've adopted since we're back in the office now. Um, just for more of a personal preference than anything else, I think, like, we were getting the work done. It's just, we're growing a sales team, so it's hard to, like, you want to get every win on a sales team, and it's hard to do that. Like, you get off a phone, you just landed a good call, you're like, there's no one to talk to. So how do you get that excitement that sales teams live there? So, but we have adopted some additional tools, like Slack is now an integral part of our communication protocol, even though we're in the office. Again, walking around the office, you got to wear masks and stuff. So we're taking advantage of that tool more often than we did before in the past. Taking even in the office, we'll do video conference in the office if it's something quick, rather than saving the walking around the office and having to put the mask on. So there's some stuff that we've learned that's helping us to be more efficient, because we went through a COVID experience and we had to adopt and make changes for what we do and how we act with each other.
And that'll serve you well when if something else comes up unexpected.
Yeah.
You'll be battle tested. Great. So Rich, what are you and the team doing to prepare for the rebound, to be ready for the other side of this?
Well, what we've done is we realized, for us in our stage of growth, we were focusing heavily on product for the last 15 plus years. Initially using the product for ourselves, and then eventually into clients. And now, a couple of years ago, we had a lot of demand for the product to be used outside of our ecosystem. So we focused on rolling out a new product line, and now learning all these different things that we need to do in order to sell an enterprise class SaaS solution. something I don't have any experience with. And doing all that got us to a point where we understood what we needed, where we needed to go. And then this year kind of hit and we're like, okay, we now have to figure all that out and in a new environment. So we're able to put stuff in
And build a
place,
sales team.
build a sales team. But first and more
Mhm.
importantly, we needed management for the team, because as a smaller company, I just don't have the bandwidth to do that as well. So we ended up finding a senior vice president of sales, got them in place, trained them completely while we were working remote, and then hired our first couple of people, all doing video conferences and Zoom to interview people and find the first group for the team. And now we have a good start foundation for our team. We have a good process in place. And now we know exactly what we're doing moving forward as the growth hits. The nice thing we've seen during COVID is we've actually seen an increase in inbound leads or phone calls because people are now have additional projects on their plate. They're working on different areas, and fraud has become obviously a topic of conversation, has been growing. We're finding that 2/3 of all marketers realize that fraud is like one of the number one concerns of marketing. So those inbounds have started to pick up as people have had, more time to do different projects and focus on different projects, versus what some of my clients have been telling me is that when they were in the office, there's a lot of cooler talk, meeting in the kitchen, having a cup of coffee, relaxing with people, which they enjoy having. Now working remote, you don't have that. So more work is getting done. And if more work's getting done, okay, what can we do to start fixing some of the problems that we just didn't have the time to fix?
Mm. Nice. Got it. So you've actually seen more inbound leads. That's great. And I hear you with less transition time. It does create more space for work and projects that people might not have taken on. So they're using the time effectively to deal with fraud.
Yeah.
That's great. So how do you see your organization will be better for having had this experience of COVID-19?
Well, it's basically, like I said, it's forced us into a situation to learn new things, adopt where you're not physically located. I used to do a lot of traveling for business, so trade shows, meeting with clients and stuff like that. So now we have a better process in management and reporting when I'm not in the office. So we definitely picked up a lot of tips and tools of how to run the business better uh, by being forced into a remote situation. And, every once in a while we'll have different things happen where, we've had it before in the past where, the office will get closed rarely, but get closed for, weather. In Delaware, we don't get a lot of snowstorms, but when we do, they tend to be pretty big, and little snow will actually shut the whole town down. So we would have people work remote. And for us, that just meant, just tell me you're doing something. We didn't have any way to make sure everybody was working or communicate with everybody. So now what happens is when we were working in COVID, we would have a morning meeting. The whole company would jump on a call. We would just run around the office. What is everybody doing today? What did you do yesterday? What's holding you back from getting your job done? Basic Scrum style meeting. And the meeting would take roughly 25, 30 minutes to go around the room, get everybody's stuff, and then check-ins throughout the day. So we have a whole management process working remote. So now if we get some inclement weather this season, we'll be able to deal with that in a more efficient way.
Great, great. And I love what you're saying about being able to cherry pick what you did to have remote work for your company now that you're back in the office.
Yep.
Excuse me. So Rich, how has your job changed?
We really haven't seen much of a change for our business and for what we do on a day-to-day basis. The only thing that we've really seen different is a better, which I guess is the change that we're looking at, is a better communication within staff and a better points of accountability of how people, what they should be working on, how they should be, moving forward, so that we're more efficient as a group. Again, as a small company, when you're a bootstrap company, you really focus on efficiency. Everybody wears a lot of hats and everybody has to do multiple things that may not be in their job description. At least in our job descriptions, they always say, and whatever is asked, because again, small companies, you need to do whatever, it's all hands on deck. Everybody grabs something and gets it done. If there's a task, it's got to and tout to somebody so it gets done. So I think efficiency is probably what we've learned most, and what's changed us most in this experience.
And how's that affected you personally in your role leading the company?
It helps because, like, for the most part, for the last 27 years, I've been running digital marketing firms of some kind or another. Um, I've always worked more heavily in the business than on the business as a CEO. And with with these changes, I'm starting to see better how I'll be able to focus working on the business versus in the business, being more effective as a leader.
Great. That's really great. Yeah, I was hoping that was what you were going to say. She mentioned earlier about how people have less transition time, and I was hoping that was true for you also.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we've touched on a few points related to this earlier, but I'm going to ask you this question to give you a chance to talk about the remote piece a little bit. We're seeing a couple of threads in these interviews. One is looking at how you can consciously build resiliency, and I'll ask you about that before I let you go. And I want to put a montage together of that. And the other is, I'm a big fan of distributed work models and remote work. And I know it doesn't work for everyone, and hybrids make more sense for some folks. So we've been remote for 16 years, and I've never had a desire for an office. So I'm also very interested in putting together a montage about the best elements that people have found of a hybrid or a remote model, and what's really what's worked for them, so that people know it's not an all or nothing thing,
Mm-hmm.
So that's all, just a little context. So I'll ask you now.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So Rich, how has COVID-19 affected the way your team is now working? I understand you're all back in the office and you were out for a few months, but what are you seeing that you're planning to keep or has made the company better?
Well, communication and accountability, I think, has gotten a nice little boost. And we, being forced into that situation and learning how to adopt, obviously was a little interesting in the first week or two. And once we got our rhythm down and perfected the process for us as a company over the couple months that we were remote, we've kept a lot of that stuff in place. So a lot of, quick huddles, with different departments, so that I know, if there's something that's missing, I can jump in and help. Because the last thing you want is a team member who's responsible for a project who's kind of stuck on something and then just wasting time not getting it done. Meanwhile, it might be a simple fix, or, if we can understand the problem, maybe we can come up with a solution together as a group. Those kind of reactionary things, or that we were working on, I think through COVID has been helpful for us as a business, that we're going to obviously keep moving forward. So I think it's forced us into a new structure that just helps us move forward more efficiently as a team. And those kind of things and tools that we've adopted, we're going to continue using moving forward.
Great. I love that, because you would not have had considered a hybrid model. Some people remote, some people in the office. You didn't have some tools. You didn't use video chatting as much, or have a tool like Slack. And now you've found, yeah. Because what you were doing was working before.
Mm-hmm.
You were an effective, efficient business. And one of the silver linings of COVID-19 for you and your group is that you've found ways to be even better, more efficient.
Correct. New tools, new methods of management, as far as just trying to get to that point where I know what's going on within the company. I know where the issues exist, so I can help solve. I can be where it's most efficient for me to be, and that's been a helpful learning experience from the event.
Great, yeah. I hear you saying that you have a better bird's eye view of the company, and you're able to be more effective in a more efficient way. It's really great.
Correct.
So I'd like to talk about resilience. Companies and people like yourself and Neura, for instance, you are able to bob and weave to even now thrive with more leads, because marketers are taking time to deal effectively with fraud, for instance. What would you recommend to someone who's out to develop their resilience muscle, either for themselves individually, or as a leader in their company, or for the company overall? Any thoughts?
When it comes to resilience, like, it's making sure that for me, it's making sure that, each team can work if I wasn't there, right? So that when I am there, I can be helpful and I can figure out where they're going and maybe even just guide them in the right direction. Um, or
So
it
you're
could
a
be
bonus, but not required.
right. So that allows me so that when I have projects that I want to work on, I can work on them knowing all the different teams are doing what they need to do. But when I have the extra time, I like to, I'm hands-on. I mean, I've been hands-on for almost 30 years with all the businesses. So it's nice to be able to pop in, find out what they're doing, make it a little adjustment if need be, and then move on knowing that what they're working on. I already know in my head what they're working on. So this way, when travel picks back up, hopefully sometime next year, and when I'm back to doing stuff, I don't have to worry about what's going on. I know exactly what everybody's working on. I know how that's all, affecting and growing the company. I could focus on the bigger projects and then integrate them as they come in.
Mhm. I love that you're making time to work on the business in addition to in the business, which is critical for leaders and founders and CXO level folks. How might someone, if they don't have that, so you've got that muscle at the point where you don't really think about it. If you were mentoring someone who wanted to develop that muscle, looking back, can you see something that you did or didn't do, or had imposed on you, or what is it that has you have that resiliency muscle, and how might someone develop it in themselves?
Um, for entrepreneurs, just to start on that, the entrepreneurs typically have a problem. They're usually hands-on. They start the business themselves and they have a hard time letting go. I know myself, I have a hard time letting go. I like to know the details because, they always say the devil's in the details. So I like to make sure I know everything that's going on. But a good friend of mine years ago, I asked him about the same thing as I was watching their company grow from 40, 50, 100, and they hit 200 employees. I'm like, how do you let go? Like, you want something, you see it in your head a certain way. You're the entrepreneur who started the business. How do you let go? And he says, honestly, I know that if I let somebody do a task that I would do, they're not going to do it the way I did it. It's just going to be, it might take more resources. It might take more servers. It might take more of other things. But as long as he gets there and gets the job done, I can now focus on another area of the business where I can be more instrumental, where maybe I'm developing something new and that I don't expect an employee to do. That's something that I have to do as a leader to develop. So while the team may not do it as effectively as me, and sometimes they do, which is what you're looking for, but they may not do it as effectively as me, they're still getting the job done. So you have to learn to just let go, trust they're going to get the job done, and focus on what needs to be done so you can focus in other areas. Otherwise, as a company, you're never going to grow. So you just got to learn to put the right people in place, give them good direction, let them do their job, guide them along the way, but be able so you can spend time elsewhere within the company where it needs to be.
Got it. In what you just said, I heard to develop yourself and being outcome focused instead of the process or how it happened necessarily. Mm-hmm. And I also heard it sounds like you're consciously getting excited about leadership projects or the types of projects that really are for you to do that you can't delegate. And then I also heard hire well.
Yeah. You gotta, it's the hardest part, and that's the hardest part. Hiring well is easier said than done. As a small business, we've come across all kinds of people, and I always feel I believe the good in everybody. Every person that comes in front of me for a job is good for a certain job, but you have to find the right person for the right seat. You have to make sure you're putting the person that you're hiring, maybe a great salesperson, but they're interviewing for a support rep, and that's not the right role for them. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you'll hire somebody and they end up getting, they end up leaving on their own. You end up firing them because they're not doing a good job because you didn't put them in the right seat. So, and that's the hardest part, identifying somebody's abilities and finding out where's the right place to stick them and do you have a place for them in your company? And I find that just to be probably the hardest part of my position is hiring, just because you don't want to mess it up. You have limited resources as a small company and you don't have time. You put the wrong person in the wrong seat, you could lose three to 6 months and have to start all over again. And it's just,
it'd be painful.
Yeah. It's the hardest part of my job is hiring.
So any good tips or tricks there?
What we found that seems to work better for us is many interviews. And before COVID, our process was, depending on the position, spend as much time with the candidate as possible. Do the first interview, do a second interview, do a third interview, potentially take them out for dinner, just to get to know them outside the office. Because on the first interview, everybody, it's like the first date. Everybody's good, everybody behaves, everybody's saying the right things. The more comfortable they get with the position and you, the more likely to let their guard down, and you can see their true person. And then from there, really understand where they would fit in the organization best. And the worst thing to do is hire somebody and put them in the wrong seat, because it's only setting them up for failure, and it's only going to frustrate you and waste time and money over in the long run. So it's important to really know the candidate as much as you can. I read an article by Tony from Zappos, and he was saying how when he's hiring for a senior position, he'll spend as much as 10 to 15 hours with the individual before making an offer. He really wants to know who they are, and that the only way to do that is spend a lot of time with them. Get to really know who the person is.
Got it. Good advice. So let's see. Let's give us one more. Rich, what has surprised you of this period inside of the coronavirus?
There's a lot of things in general, but I think our space, or the space that I'm in digital marketing space, has been growing, amongst the COVID issues, which is shocking. I was kind of expecting to teeter off or to reduce, but people still need car insurance. People still need to buy things online. Obviously online shopping has gone up because of people that don't want to do it. And, that wasn't expected. I was expecting to see a general downturn across most industries. But obviously there's certain industries hit harder than most, like, the restaurant business, the travel industry, those have got hit significantly hard. What was surprising to see is digital marketing grow. I wasn't expecting that, but it from what we're seeing from clients reporting back to us, the inbound leads that we're seeing, that are, more and more people are having time to figure this stuff out. That was pretty shocking, surprisingly shocking for us.
Got it. Is there a question I haven't asked you that you'd like me to?
No, I think for the general topic that we're talking about, I think we're in good shape.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And we'll send you a link to check out the videos before we post.
Okay.
And if you have any questions or comments, happy to hear those. Thank you again for your time and for your willingness to talk.
Appreciate it.
I've been impressed with what you guys do and with your team. Yeah, you're doing great work over there. Thanks for that. I appreciate seeing just